Objection!
The Ace Attorney series is excellent at devising so many types of characters to control your emotions, from the lovable sidekicks to the awesome prosecutors, and then some of the most brilliantly executed douchebags in all of gaming, the villains.
Villains are something to cherish in Ace Attorney because of just how varied they are and the methods needing to be taken to bring them down being ever different and always satisfying.
These villains and their intricate plans and motivations are often the best part of an entire case, as they're responsible for most of the twists and turns your investigations take.
Then you confront them trying to prove that they were the real murderer. When all hope seems lost, you bring the final decisive evidence, and then they freak out and throw wigs at you.
Oh, and obs spoilers are obs because villains and their schemes and such. We'll put up warnings before each segment. Anyways, I'm Countdown Black.
And I'm Randiesel27.
And these are our top 10 Ace Attorney villains.
Objection!
Quercus Alba, the biggest troll in the entire series. Taking him down took about 2 hours for fuck's sake. Not only did he manage to kill 2 people, he was also the ringleader of a smuggling ring for 10 years, acting for most of the case totally above being prosecuted due to his position as ambassador of Alabast.
His insufferable arrogance makes him a tough foe to intimidate, which fits with his theme song, The Enemy Who Surpasses the Law, and if that doesn't speak does what he wants, then I don't know what would.
In Turnabout Ablaze, Edgy and Kay visit the Alabast and Babel's shared embassy in search of the fake Yatagarasu, and it's upon your arrival where shit truly begins to hit the fan. Arson, 2 murders, and the smuggling ring between the embassies of various weapons and people they shouldn't be where they're found.
It all then leads to one person, controlling the entire operation and being behind all of the plots of the game, amongst others, whom you first meet pretending to just be a frail old man, White Oak Tree. Like we said, this guy is such a troll. Because of his high position, he can practically admit to serial killings and no one would bat an eye, which makes his takedown a lengthy and very taxing affair, taking several hours and the supports of a range of side characters met in the case.
And actually taking him down is one hell of a challenge, which does drag on a little too much for our likings, but still enjoyable just due to the epic scope of the organization you're going against, how broad his extensive criminal activity was, and how much of a callous, selfish prick he is, which makes his defeat all the sweeter. Not to mention, seeing Edward steal samurai fanboyism come out the angrier he gets is utterly priceless.
Also, his final takedown ends with a Scooby-Doo reference. Oh, Capcom, you glorious bastards.
Hold it!
Perhaps the most infamous of villains on the list, though only number 9, Manfred von Karma. We sure love to hate this guy.
Honestly, I used to utterly hate this guy, calling him my most hated video game character of all time. But after replaying these games, that's died down and I can recognize his role as a pretty solid villain.
You're first introduced to him as the guy with a perfect prosecutorial record for 40 years, only suffering a single penalty, before you later realize his role in a 15-year-old murder days before the trial is erased from public files. Ace Attorney's version of law isn't exactly right accurate, but hell if it don't make for a good video game.
Manfred experienced the power cut occurring in the courtroom at the time. Walking past an elevator where Yana Yogi, Miles, and Gregory Edgeworth were trapped, he was accidentally shot in the shoulder by a misfired bullet. Somewhat peeved following his injury, he shot Gregory Edgeworth in the heart. No one thought that he could have been killed by someone outside of the elevator, so Von Karma was never suspected.
Von Karma's actions not only killed a man, but ruined the life of 3 others. One exposed as a fraud after channeling the lying ghost of Gregory Edgeworth protecting his son, one forced to live a life of pretense insanity, and one constantly having nightmares over the instant he thought he killed his father. No 2 ways about it, Von Karma's an arsehole.
And that's not counting all the innocent people he found guilty due to illegitimate means or those same bad habits he passed down to his apprentice, Miles Edgeworth, or setting up a further murder scheme to frame Edgeworth and then prosecute against him. Then there's his formidable presence in the courtroom, totally controlling the tide of play, making Turnabout Goodbyes a tough trial to win.
He's iconic and seems untouchable, so seeing him thump his head against the wall in anger as he loses is one of the most satisfying moments in the series. He's only not higher on here because there's very little personality to him aside from being a dick, in the first game or in any other cases he cameos in.
My ATM card number is 0001 because I'm number 1!
No, Manfred, you're number 9. Now get the fuck out of our courtroom.
Silence!
Dual Destinies certainly stepped up the series on the grander scale. Before, villains were mostly one-time crooks, but now we have terrorists, the means responsible for instilling all the awful law practices into students, and to top it off, a worldwide renowned super spy and serial killer. Fuck.
The Phantom. Just the Phantom. The guy who killed Athena Sykes' mother, causing horrendous trauma that would stick to her for a lifetime, Clay Tarrant, and possibly countless others during his time as a spy. Deception through the likes of Simon Keyes and Madden Guard were shocking, but this? The ultimate supervillain Ultra Spy was disguised the entire time as the justice-obsessed Detective Fulbright? What?
And he's so committed to his job and new personality that he's in total command of his emotions and has even forgotten what he really looks like. He feels no fear to the point where he can just casually imitate Phoenix perfectly like it's nothing.
It's because of what he did 7 years ago to Meatus Sykes that put Simon Blackwell on death row. But he had been chasing after the Phantom the entire time as well, which is why he still wanted to prosecute, and why Edgeworth, as chief prosecutor, let him.
So he took the disguise of a detective, possibly murdering the real detective, in order to dispose of any evidence towards him, forcing him to kill Apollo's best friend, Clay Tarrant.
So Apollo felt the need to take matters into his own hands because he felt so affected, causing him to turn on Athena because of what Fulbright said, making him one manipulative bastard.
And the guy has done so much to other organizations that just testifying in a courtroom is dangerous for how many people hate him and that he could get sniped. Which then actually happens. That breakdown in particular is one of the most dramatic and ultimately epic after seeing the triple finger point of justice from Athena, Apollo, and Phoenix, and all of his personalities beginning to come out.
Being such an incredible actor and so stealthy means on one hand he has little personality that's not stolen from the real Bobby Fulbright, but on the other hand makes him an incredibly unique villain for one we still know so little about and such a scarily elusive and powerful foe.
In justice we trust, eh? Yeah, so do we, Bobby, which ain't looking so good on your side of the courtroom. Gotcha! The Ace Attorney series doesn't have a bad game, but the closest we've got is Apollo Justice.
But it's so overhated.
Lacking in some areas, yes, but what it did right, it did right.
Oh really? Like what?
Well, the music was pretty good, and the writing was also funny, with Apollo himself getting many great moments.
But it was so underwhelming. The characters, cases, and writing all just weren't up to Ace Attorney standards.
Okay, I can agree on that, but Christoph Gavin is an amazing villain.
I wouldn't say amazing.
In a twist of events, 'twas not the prosecution that was the murderer, but the defense. Apollo's mentor was single-handedly responsible for the disbarment of Phoenix Wright, thus causing the dark age of the law. He also caused the death of not one, but 2 people, and he put the blame on the second victim's daughter, in which Christoph almost got away with killing, as well as through being so indirect in either killing, and the genius touch of poisoning Vera's nail polish to try to make her kill herself when biting her nails before revealing himself. This guy is pretty evil, and the fact that he's just so calm and professional in his vile actions makes him even scarier.
But that's why he's so boring to me. I get that he's meant to be cool-headed, but prior to his breakdown he shows very little character at all, apart from being a gentleman and an arsehole. Especially how with other villains during their takedown you really come to understand their minds, and makes cracking them feel ultimately more satisfying when you begin to use their own character faults against them. You don't really get that here.
Really? You sure you aren't confusing lack of personality with personality too complex to understand at a glance?
It was hard to guess he was the villain, but that only made the reveal that he was in the very first case so surprising and satisfying. And despite not showing many flaws before you corner him, seeing his truest self come out upon his ultimate breakdown was stunning, especially given it was at the hand of the scummy lawyer whom he got disbarred.
Ugh. That takedown? Definitely the weakest of any Ace Attorney finale for how anticlimactic it was. It's like, you did it, I think. Yeah, but where's your evidence? Lol JK jury system, fuck. Unlike any other case in the series, the satisfaction of using your wits and evidence to outsmart and discredit the villain is completely revoked by the idea of a jury system a non-playable Phoenix Wright had from the start. And on top of that, proving his guilt in the final case doesn't even really do anything, as at this point he's already in jail for a previous murder anyway. Talk about underwhelming.
Just ignore my colleague over there. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
Christoph Gavin is a fantastic villain for his genius cunning when committing crimes and how surprising the reveal of his villainy was. His crazy true self is entertaining as all hell and made for a totally engaging villain whom it had taken over 7 years to bring about the taking down of. If you ask me, he should be well into the top 5 of this list.
And if you ask me, he wouldn't scrape the top 10. Look at me, like as in look at me? My word, these puns are getting worse.
Though despite the quality of the hidden jokes of the Capcom localization team, it's a pretty fitting name for such an attention-seeking weirdo. You're introduced to Atme as the ace detective and nemesis of Mask to Mask, but as anyone can work out, the man who stayed up all night on guard yet somehow let the thief walk through the front door to steal the sacred urn knows slightly more than he's letting on.
At first you think he is Master Mask, which would make sense for him knowing so much yet accomplishing so little. You first prove him responsible for stealing the sacred urn to clear your client Ron Delight's name, but things turn out not to be so simple.
The real Mask to Mask turns out to be Ron Delight, as he's always stated. From lousily hidden clues on the crime scene, Atme found out Ron's identity and began blackmailing him over the stolen goods in exchange for giving him detailed plans of committing the thefts.
But a third man, Kane Bullard, caught wind of Atme's scheme and began to blackmail him over his blackmail. Thus began the blackmail chain of Ron to Atme to Bullard, of which only Atme didn't profit from. He killed Bullard and then used the pretty ingenious plan to get Wright to formally accuse him of being Mask to Mask in court so he'd have the perfect alibi for the murder and be able to remove himself from the blackmail chain to provide a motive for Ron to kill Bullard to frame him.
He's such a pompous buffoon that seeing him speak, and especially trying to be clever, is hilarious on its own, making every scene he's in a total delight. He could be seen as a parody of the typical genius detectives. He does reference Sherlock Holmes more than once, but instead of having the case prove his enormous intellect and cunning deductions, the revelations of the case slowly highlight how fake this ace detective is, as he goes from ace detective to great thief to plain old murderer.
Luke Atme is certainly an odd one. More a cartoon character than anything, his pretentious mannerisms and smug demeanor make for an entertaining foe, and learning the complexity of his schemes with Mask to Mask provide an interesting takedown, and certainly a villain more memorable than most. That's when my nemesis, the infamous Mask to Mask, dancingly descended upon me.
Dancingly descended? From where exactly?
Well, from the entrance, I suppose. Where else?
So, in actuality, he neither danced nor descended. Someone please save me. Hey, this is Randiesel27. Thanks for watching 5 entries of this collab, but did you know there are actually 5 more? Click on the box for part 2. Go on, click it. Has villains, we promise.